What I really want to talk today about is SD-WAN is a hot topic, and everyone has heard about it in the industry, and we're also here at an NFV event, and I really want to sort of tie the two together and talk about our view and our experience and how can NFV help service providers to expedite and accelerate their SD-WAN offering. So if we move on to the next slide, I think this slide is a great slide. If we probably look at the NFV World Congress event over the last 4 or 5 years, it's gone through different steps. So 4 or 5 years, and then in the first event, it was mostly we were in that gray area of consolidation and understanding what is NFV, what is a virtualized function. By the way, the timer is wrong as well. I have 15 seconds left, so I can be quick, but not that quick. Great, I've gained now 20 seconds. No, go back one slide. I'm not done with that slide yet. One more click. Perfect, great. And then, so initially it was mostly around the standardization and the technical feasibility. I think that by now, definitely, the entire market is in the virtualization space. I don't think there's a single service provider in the world that doesn't have some sort of strategy around virtualization. And most service providers are, at the very least, moving from, and at least in certain domains, from physical assets to virtualized assets. Where we don't see enough traction yet, and this is where we definitely hope to see the market start moving faster, is into orchestration, so into more complex use cases in combination of multiple different services, and at the end of the day, into broader scale automation. At the end of the day, virtualization is all about business benefits and how do we really automate the network. So if we move to the next slide, this is where we see several different approaches. So in that first step, we see in many cases VNFs that come with no orchestration. It's mostly about a replacement of a physical function with a virtual network function. There are certain benefits in terms of maintenance and upgrades and so on, but the operational benefits are usually fairly limited. In that step 2, what we're starting to see is what we call domain orchestration. So rather than transform your entire network, which tends to be a more complex process, takes sometimes a bit longer, could require a greater upfront investment, we're focusing on a specific domain. In most cases, it's around enterprise and SD-WAN, which is why I'll focus on that. And we try to reap the benefits of orchestration in that specific domain. But the end goal is really to reach that cross-domain orchestration. And what I really want to talk to you about today is how can orchestration and NFV help better expedite that second step in the middle as a sort of cornerstone and as an intermediate step until we reach that end-to-end view and the full blueprint and architecture that we all hope to get to. So let's talk for a second. We've talked about NFV and the different approaches. Let's talk about SD-WAN. SD-WAN is definitely, I don't think I need to elaborate too much, but one of the hottest topics in the market today. We've seen the number of M&As just in the last year and a half. Sorry for picking Gartner data and not Analysis Mason, but I'll fix that next time. But it's definitely a very fast-growing market. But what is also interesting about SD-WAN, it does potentially pose a threat to service providers. Because if in the past there was a traditional model, service providers were building their networks and providing connectivity to customers, now we see, and you can see that pie chart on the right-hand side, there are managed SD-WANs that are provided by vendors. There are managed SD-WANs that are provided by CSPs, and there's also the DIY, the do-it-yourself approach. There are enterprises, in most cases large enterprises, that rather than buy connectivity from service providers, they contact or they purchase equipment and solutions directly from SD-WAN vendors, and they build their own networks as over-the-top networks. And by that, they're basically bypassing the enterprise services, which are usually the premium services and the more costly services that service providers are offering. If we move to the next slide, this is where, when we analyze this, there is a clicker now? Oh, perfect. You're off the hook. Thank you. When we analyze this, while the do-it-yourself approach could potentially offer, maybe in certain scenarios, lower price points, it definitely offers flexibility. It could be very fast to deliver, but service providers do have the ability to differentiate. When the service providers, as the ones who control the network, they are the ones that are in the best position possible to really guarantee SLAs and managed services. They can tie SD-WAN with MPLS, and we're going to discuss this a bit later on. And most importantly, they can offer bundled services. So it's not just about the connectivity, but they can tie this with a wide range of different value-added services. And this is where we believe that they have the opportunity to differentiate, and this is their way to sort of turn that potential threat into an opportunity. Now, when we look at SD-WAN, and if we all agree that this is a great opportunity, there are also a few challenges. When we now try to introduce SD-WAN, it's not all that straightforward. First of all, if we wish to guarantee very fast time to market, we need to be able to deal with onboarding of a large number of different functions, which definitely if we want to start offering different value-added services, security, caching, DPI, and so on. If we want to ensure that we innovate on the service, we need to deal with different siloed platforms, different functions, different elements of the blueprint. We need to definitely deal with monetization. The more services we sell, we need to ensure that we can monetize them and charge for them, and that means that we can't just deal with the connectivity. We need to tie this into the overall IT stack. We definitely need to deal with the operational aspects. We're now adding another technology, and that all needs to be streamlined in terms of the process, and then we want to introduce as much automation as possible. And last but not least, we want to ensure a new type of customer experience. And this is where a lot of operators are also leveraging virtualization in general and SD-WAN specifically in order to introduce self-service capabilities. So now, rather than have the customer call the call center and order services in a traditional way, you can offer customers their own portal, and they can order and customize their own services, and that definitely leads to a much greater and a completely different level of customer service. So this is where we believe that NFV orchestration is a critical piece in the overall SD-WAN offering. So this is where NFV orchestration can first of all ensure that we don't just manage the connectivity, but we manage the end-to-end service lifecycle of the service across fulfillment, automation, assurance, and so on. We want to introduce as much as possible closed loop, or what we call policy-driven automation, so make sure that the network is self-healing and we remove as many of the manual processes as possible. We want to make sure that this also works across a multi-vendor, multi-domain environment. We see service providers that are introducing different SD-WAN controllers. You need to work across different data centers, different applications, and so on. And last but not least, and I've touched a bit on this early on as well, in some cases SD-WAN is added not as a complete replacement to the traditional IP MPLS links, but as an additional service. And when we are seeing what we call hybrid offering, where you leverage both types of technologies for better redundancy and better quality of service. So this is where, as I've mentioned, we really want to make sure that we're spanning across the entire life cycle of a service, starting from the design and onboarding stage. So how do we automate as much as possible the onboarding of new VNFs, the design of new services, the design of policies, then the fulfillment of those services. So how do we accelerate as much as possible the fulfillment and the introduction of those services into the network? But as critical is how do we ensure that we do closed loop automation and we use an end-to-end service orchestration in order to be able to automate the operational aspects of the network. And this is where, at least from our experience so far, we see the most significant business benefits as a result of significant and pretty quick reduction in the OpEx of the network. The multi-domain, so again, SD-WAN is typically focused much more on the initial connectivity in between the customer prem and the first central office or co-location point. And we really want to make sure that we can manage services end-to-end across the entire network with VNFs located in different locations. They could be located in the customer premise, in the headquarters, in a data center, in a public cloud environment, and we're leveraging that as well. And this spans well beyond the traditional scope and the traditional connectivity of SD-WAN. Now, let's say you're a service provider and you want to start introducing SD-WAN. Typically, and I'll run through a lot of these steps quickly, this turns to be a pretty complex integration project. So you now have SD-WAN, and you might have several different VNFs that you want to introduce into the network, and you need to integrate them with a portal if you wish to offer that new level of customer experience, into billing and product catalog and ordering and so on. And there are it becomes this pretty complex spaghetti of integration points. And this is what we're trying to simplify, and we're trying to abstract. And one of the things we launched here at the show is what we call an NFV SD-WAN package. So what we've taken several components, an SD-WAN controller, several different VNFs, mostly security, and at least at the initial phase with Fortinet. And we've integrated that into a package that has standard northbound TMF-based APIs that simplify the introduction or the integration into the BSS and ordering and billing and components, has already the pre-integration and the onboarding towards a large set of different VNFs. And basically what that provides us is, you can think of it as an off-the-shelf product, or as close as possible to an off-the-shelf product, where we have not just the NFV, not just the SD-WAN, not just different VNFs, and not just the integration, the orchestration. We have all of them integrated into one package that can support multiple different scenarios and use cases across SD-WAN, across security, and across the data center, with a self-service portal that is available as well, and again, open and standard APIs to simplify the integration into any BSS system out there. I've mentioned earlier the lifecycle management of a service and the fact that we want to span across the different stages. What we're really trying to do with this package is to dramatically simplify or to dramatically shorten that fairly long period of time it typically takes to onboard, define services, and introduce them into the field. So this package concept is very much focused on how do you allow service providers to sort of use, there's obviously less flexibility, at least internally, but how can you leverage use cases that have already been implemented with other customers, take a product that is fairly standardized and off the shelf, and introduce that in a much quicker manner into the field. I've mentioned the fact that self-service and self-care is also an integral part of this. This is definitely a trend we're seeing with a lot of customers, and when we look at the over-the-top providers, what Google and Amazon and all these folks are doing, it's a completely different approach to customer service, and this is where we're trying to provide that, at least in part, into the network as well. So part of what we have in that package is a self-service portal. This is a portal that is actually not targeting the CSP, but rather the enterprise customer itself. And they can log into the portal, select their different sites, select the different types of services, different options of VNFs. It simplifies and it streamlines the ordering process as well, but it's not used just for ordering. It could be used as a management tool to configure changes in the services and to optimize the introduction of different services later on as well. Everything I've described so far is not a theoretical. It's exercise. It's not slideware. This package concept was born as a result of a very successful project we've implemented a bit over a year ago with Comcast Business, which I'm sure all of you know is the largest cable operator in the US and the second largest fixed line operator in the US after AT&T, and definitely one of the largest operators in the world. We've gone through a similar project with them around the introduction of SD-WAN and NFV for enterprise services, specifically IPVPNs. It was actually a result of a clear and immediate business need. So they went through, they realized that they're starting to lose market share and they're facing significant challenges in introducing enterprise services, specifically MPLS services, and this is where we came in with Versa as our partner and with some of our other partners and introduced an end-to-end solution with NFV orchestration, with automation of the fulfillment steps of the network, and this is already running in production for over a year now and growing pretty quickly. So in essence, what we've taken here is a proven, field-proven solution that works with one of the largest operators in the world and package that into that SD-WAN package, so it could be easily replicated in other places. As you can see, that project we've implemented, again, spans across all the different stages of the service. So it starts from the service delivery through the fulfillment. We've integrated that with an assurance solution as well. And this is, again, is already proving and providing significant operational benefits. Starting to wrap up, and we have a bit more time, one of the key messages I want you to leave with is, while we're in a technology-related conference and event, and NFV and SDN are heavily technical-related terms, at the end of the day, I think what is really driving this are business benefits. And when we try to summarize what are some of the business benefits we're seeing from NFV, and specifically for NFV in the enterprise space, has to do with, first of all, how do we really shorten the introduction time for services? How do we shorten that order to cash cycle? And this is where we're seeing a significant reduction with most of our customers. We're seeing something like 80% reduction in the time and in the cost it takes them from the time a service is ordered until that is delivered. And it also provides a much stronger streamlining of the ordering process. It provides acceleration of time to market for new types of services as well. So it's not just about, if you have a service that is already in your catalog, how you deliver that faster, but how can you be more attuned to your customers, and how can you quicker define new types of services. And this is where, again, we see a very significant reduction, and that in turn, in most cases, leads to a significant increase in your ability to generate new revenues, because all service providers are in a very competitive environment. And if you can now react faster and be better aligned with your customer requirements and roll out new types of services, that will definitely put you in a better positioning. The operational efficiency is a critical aspect. So we're seeing typical service providers are seeing very quick and immediate improvements in OpEx as a result of the fact that we now have a higher degree of automation in the network. We have less faults, or less faults that require manual intervention. The service gets delivered right the first time. And last but not least, this is a first step in the introduction of NFV or SDN in a broader sense. I think that at least our view, and I think this is what the consensus I'm seeing with most folks in the industry, that the question about NFV is not if, it's only when and exactly how. And we're going now through the evolution process, but we're rather than start with an end-to-end network-wide transformation, we feel that in many cases a more pragmatic approach of focusing on one domain and taking that into the market has greater value. So to summarize, I've walked you through, and I think that the ability for service providers to really differentiate and to offer a new level of customer experience is key. The competition can no longer be just about who has the fattest or the broadest pipe. It needs to be about customer value and customer experience and differentiation against other types of services. Another key element is service lifecycle management. So it's not just about the connectivity, it's how do we manage the service itself. At the end of the day, the service is the business value. This is what the service providers are selling to their customers. So how do we manage the service lifecycle end-to-end, starting from the design stage through the fulfillment and all the way through automation. And last but not least, it's all about acceleration of time to market. So this is where we want to be able to ensure that we can roll out services much faster, we can produce types of services faster. And when we talk about NFV, how do we take a more pragmatic approach into this very complex topic and start from one domain? From what we've seen with many of our customers, the minute you have one of these domains or one of these use cases implemented in your environment, and you can start seeing the operational benefits at first hand, you start measuring your own KPIs, it's much easier to justify that investment moving forward. With that, I'm done. I think we have a minute and a half for a question or two if anyone has any question. If not, I'll leave you more spare time for your next session. Oh, yeah. So not a question, a comment. Absolutely, you're right. If you're interested, we have in our booth a live demo of this package solution. You're more than welcome to stop by and and see it at firsthand. Thank you for the comment. Okay, Frank, thank you very much.
Thank you.